Welcome to Magic Club. I'm Andrew Main, joined by Jordan Gold.
Hello.
And live from Hollywood?
Los Angeles.
Yeah. Is Mr. Blake Vogt. How you doing, Blakers?
Good. How are you guys?
Fantastic. So, listen, I'm a member. Jordan's a member. Cyan Carnell, member. Blake, member number 4 of Magic Club. Member number 4. How's it feel?
It feels fantastic. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us here. We have yet to air any of these, so we have no idea to see what will happen, what kind of internet outrage we're going to have. Just to recap, for those of you who may not be familiar with Blake, talking to you, whatever rock you're under, Blake is both a performer and a magic creator. As magic creators go, Blake is he's exceptional all around. Blake has worked for people like, I don't know, David Copperfield,
Andrew Blaine,
David Blaine. He's appeared on things like Wizard Wars and Penn and Teller Fool Us. And Blake, besides being a super nice guy, is basically a genius. So we're happy to have you. And a hilarious performer. Super, super likable, super, super fun. Great stuff. So, Blake, we're excited to have you here.
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for having me.
Of course. So let's get started with a little bit of magic news here. There was an item in the website I wasn't familiar with, narrative.ly, L-Y, and it's about a female magician from New York City, Tanya Solomon, and goes on to describe her show that she's performing at New York City in the Cobra Club. It's kind of a nice kind of character piece about her, what it's like to be a female magician. Sounds like she's got a wonderful, quirky sense of humor. They describe her as her right arm has an LOO cat wearing a fez, and the other is a reimagined Alfred E. Newman as the Hindu goddess Kali, and talks about her approach towards magic, what it's like being a female magician, which, you know, as I say this, means we need to have some female magicians on the show soon, so Magic Club doesn't just become, you know, like every other.
It's nothing better than a bunch of guys sitting around talking about female perspectives, you know?
I know, exactly. But I think it's worth checking this. We're going to put the article in the show notes here to check this out, to read about her and her show and understand, you know, what's it like from her point of view. And she's talking about some of the things, the challenges of doing that. You know, people making assumptions, you know, when she's in front of hangs out at a magic shop, people think she's the mom, you know.
Wow.
But anyhow, well worth checking that out. But does it feel like it's changed? Do you feel like there are more female magicians today than before? Anybody?
I do.
I definitely do. I mean, it seems like they're popping up, not popping up, but there's a lot more articles coming out. I don't know if there are more actually, or we're just hearing about them more, but there definitely does to be a lot more coverage of females doing their own shows and getting out there and promoting themselves. And I think it's great. I think this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, with social media and Instagram and those types of short little videos too, like on the Magic Trick feed and stuff, I'm seeing more and more girls doing stuff. And I think a couple weeks ago I saw some crazy flourishing that was just hands. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I even investigated it more was because there was like fingernail paint like on the fingers, and I was like, either, you know, this dude just wears nail polish on his fingers, or this is like crazy female flourisher, and it was. So that was cool as well. Just with different social media and YouTube and different things being able to expose people to more performers. I think you're right, Jordan. If it's not more, it just seems that way too.
One of the things our viewers can do with Magic Club, you know, we're going to do our part to you know, bring on a diverse group of people onto here to talk about magic and share their experiences. But when you see articles or items about this, let us know. Tell us what other people are doing. We want to show all sides of magic and try to be as inclusive as possible. So I was glad to see this piece. It does have this sort of like, you know, well, you know, it's the theater's half full. They've got to sort of like, you know, the how rough it is to be a magician kind of thing. And right now we've got the documentary just came out on Netflix about the Magicians documentary.
Yep.
Have you both seen that one?
Right. Marcy Hume's The Magicians on Netflix.
I coincidentally, unbeknownst that you would bring that up, watched that for the first time this morning.
Oh, really?
I've seen that very recently.
What was your takeaway on that?
it was cool. It was very real.
Right.
I didn't expect that. That kind of caught me off guard. And I don't know if people. I think it's cool that they didn't really sugarcoat much, and that if someone watches that knowing nothing about magic at all, I think it would be a slap in the face. Like it's kind of extreme. I don't know. What did you guys think?
I haven't seen it. I'm
Oh,
too
So,
too afraid to watch this. I mean, I know that I knew when it was made, and I know that like they decided not to talk about kind of the aftermath of Reuven and whatnot. It's kind of like, yeah, it's that burying the lead kind of thing. So I haven't seen it, so I can't judge it by its own right. And I also know that like with a guy like John Armstrong, who in the trailers doesn't get presented very favorably, but he's a guy that's been having, I think, just a number of great successes and stuff, of recent and in seeing that. So it's that kind of the idea of like showing magicians in one particular frame of time and like, well, isn't this sad? But
right.
that's
well,
sort of
and
my take
this film this was filmed 5 years ago, I believe. It's been a while since they made it to when it came out, and magic in the last 5 years has kind of exploded in a huge way. I mean, there weren't the amount of shows and movies out that there are now about magic. So I think that just the entire experience of being a professional magician since that time has gotten hopefully a little less dark.
Yeah.
As there's more opportunities in not just to do shows, but to do everything. I mean, Blake, you just did you've been doing a ton of consulting. I just did some work. I think we worked on the same movie, actually.
Yep.
Were you on Magic Camp as well? Yeah. So,
Yep.
yeah. And I think that it's just a slightly different landscape now than when this movie was made. So,
Oh yeah, but it's common in documentaries that every time it goes into a different platform, whatever, to do a little update or addendum or say, hey, this is there, that, and I don't know. I'm not in a position to judge it either way. So I would just say that it's like, man, well, there's like, it is on the other hand, feels like it seems very real, and that's the scary part. Nobody likes a mirror. Speaking of magic and things happening, we have been very lucky. I thought Wizard Wars was a really well done show. I thought that the magicians were presented very well in that, and it made magic look good. I think Penn and Teller Fool Us is an extremely well done show. I think that magicians go on there look really good. But now we're at the time of the year where it's America's Got Talent auditions, and that's a show that I would say people ask me my opinion on that, and I generally am the advice that I don't think it's the best outlet for a magician. I've had a number of friends go on there that have had very negative experiences.
if only we had somebody we could talk to who's actually been on the show. Blake, do you know anybody that maybe has experience being on America's Got Talent?
Very recently have some tales.
It's
Yes.
almost as
Indeed.
if I selected these topics for a purpose, Jordan.
My gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, I had heard. Oh, do you want me to speak about this?
Yes.
Go for it.
Yes.
Anything you'd love to tell us?
I had heard quite a few negative stories as well from friends and people I had met that I had talked to about it. I had considered doing it a few times, and when this opportunity came around, November of last year, I guess, was when it all started. So it started really early, and it was kind of one of those things where I had heard so many bad stories that I feel like me personally, I was prepared for and expecting the worst, kind of in a bad way. Like I was just ready for all of these twists and turns, and never mind, you can't do that. And no, we're not going to let you do that. And actually, can you do something completely different? I think because I'd heard all these horror stories, I went in over prepared for them. And then when it wasn't that bad, I was like, oh, this is fun. This is fine. Because I think I had heard some pretty extreme situations. So maybe over preparedness and luck and all of that combined, I had a blast doing it. So, but I could see where you could have a not so fun time on there as well.
Well, and I feel like that also is an experience that seems to have changed since magicians started going on it, to the point it sort of peaked with, I guess the turning point was Matt Franco winning. And then after that, it seems to have been getting better for magicians. And I think that it's not just that show as its own bubble, but I think magic as a whole right now overall is getting a lot more attention. And so I think it's boding well for the magicians on that show.
Yeah.
What was your experience after the show as well? Because we all, hopefully most of us saw you on the show. But I'm curious to know what it's like, going in before you're an America's Got Talent contestant, and then afterwards, like, what's that ride?
The ride's still happening, which is cool. So I'm in the midst of it. I don't know if I can really fully reflect on it yet, but like before America's Got Talent, I have never been recognized anywhere in public except for like at magic conventions. I feel like standing next to a DVD with my face on it or something. Like that was the only experience I'd ever had to being recognized. And since AGT, way more people watched that show than I thought. And also, I think, I was speaking to one of my friends about this recently, that a lot of people on that show or on TV maybe play a character or play a performer or play, like Tape Face was a contestant on this year who wears like really heavy eye makeup and he has duct tape wrapped around his face and his hair spiked. And I got to hang out with that performer off stage and off camera, and he was the sweetest, coolest dude, but looks nothing like that. And I kind of realized that I look, act, sound, dress the exact same way on the show as I do in real life. So I think that probably contributes a little bit to me getting recognized, because I look and sound as annoying as I do on TV. So that helps. But I think like getting recognized is something I've gotten had happened since then, which is really cool. And then probably like a lot of people have been asking, like, are you just booked every night after AGT? And the sad truth is no, I'm not. But I am booked more. I think you have to still consciously make an effort to get booked after even a show like that. But what is kind of nice is after the kind of like, and I'm sure Andrew would love to hear your thoughts on this, but like, I'm guessing after having your own TV show, like you can charge more for the same gigs. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly true. That is, but of course the problem is you then get into a thing where you want to protect the price too. Is you charge more, but then you have to decide, okay, because after, within the year of doing something on TV, it's a very, very big, there's demand. And then, there's always watching. I studied, watched with David Blaine and others to see like, okay, when does the demand have its peak and when does the demand start to ebb, and sort of, plan for like, okay, for me, it was like, just do as many shows as I can when it's, worthwhile, and then do something else when it's not.
Yeah.
That's why I do things like, write books.
That.
What's that?
That's so awesome.
What kind of shows does this lead to? And also like, how do you describe yourself? You say I've seen you at the Castle do platform magic. And so is that what you sort of put yourself out there at? What kind of shows are you doing?
Yeah, I love stage. I love performing on stage way more than I personally enjoy being hired to perform close up.
Mm-hmm.
I love performing close up when I'm not hired to perform close up. So like casually friends, out with people or meeting people. I always have stuff on me or can do something close up magic wise. And I love the lack of pressure that comes with under promise and over delivering on like casual, good close up magic.
Mm-hmm.
And then on stage, I love performing on stage. So do more of the comedic approach, try to be funny while performing good magic. So that's kind of what I advertise, book, and try to get hired as a stage performer for audiences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That differentiation is certainly, I think it's helpful to understand when you start thinking about how you're going to address different markets. And if you are it's not hard, I think, to be a close-up magician to be able to transition into a platform or stage. And I think that you just take what you just figure out what plays to a broader, bigger audience, and I think that you're going to have a lot more venues to perform in. I have friends that kind of see themselves as close-up magicians, and it's like what you're doing can fit on stage, easily. So, and I think people get kind of hung up on illusions and big illusion stuff. That's not the trend now, anyways. That's not really what gets you booked on cruise ships and some of the other venues. Is they want that portability. So if you can play both those roles, you're in a good position.
Yeah, with America's Got Talent, it was really interesting because I talked to Pip the Magic Dragon, Oz Perlman, Matt Franco, Derek Hughes. So I talked to like a few of the guys who I thought did well with the show the last couple of years before I ventured out to try to do it. And they all had very similar advice, which was helpful. I was hearing the same thing from all of them. And one thing that was interesting was that if you have an idea of what you want to get booked as, you should only do that type of magic on the show.
Yeah.
Because they have a habit on the show of asking or pushing or getting people to do types of magic that maybe you're able to do, but it might not be the type of magic you want to get hired to do. And these shows, because you don't get paid to do AGT, so it's like, it's advertisements that you're putting on TV. So what do you want to advertise that you're good at? And I feel like I got really lucky because in years past, they've done a good job, or they've done a consistent job on AGT of whatever you auditioned doing, they make you do that same thing every round.
Yeah.
So Matt Franco did an amazing card routine on his audition, and he told me that the next few rounds, people were like, he pitched other ideas, and they're like, no, we'd prefer for you to do card tricks.
It was interesting. It was after him. It's like every year, because I have iTricks.com, and AGT reaches out to us to promote that they're doing auditions. I get the call from the people they're asking us to talk about it, and it's like because Matt Franco was a great success for him. Like, hey, look at Collins Keys did good, and then Matt winning was great for them, and they're like, well, we're hoping more magicians will come do this show. And my thing was, well, you've had some of the best there and treated them very poorly, in my opinion. And I think that's problem is that, and for some people, it's hard. If you're an illusionist, to go do that show is a big investment. I know people who've spent tens of thousands of dollars for the hopes of making it further than they did because they got pushed to sort of do something. And the beauty of what Matt Franco did was Matt was able to do close up and show his personality, let his personality shine. He's an extremely likable person that worked. But then they were telling me after, well, we want more illusionists. We want more illusionists to come. I'm like, well, the only guy that won was a guy that did close-up magic, and you've had the best brains in magic, in my opinion, go on there and do stuff and not make it, make it past the first couple rounds at great expense. And now you're saying, well, yeah, we want you guys to come back. We want more people like that. When it's like the only guys that get pretty far seem to be the ones doing, close-up stuff.
Right. Well, I think, I was pretty easygoing as a contestant to work with at the beginning. I said yes to everything. I rolled with the punches. I could talk for 4 hours about the weird crap that came up. Can I say crap? What's this podcast rated, I guess?
PG-13.
Okay. So,
at the moment, until
but for
we
you,
see
Blake,
what
we'll go all the way NC-17 just to see what comes out of your mouth.
Okay. So really bad crap.
Ooh.
They had me do.
Wow.
Oh, so, but it was, the further I got in the competition, the more I chose to be headstrong in some of the things that they were asking me to do. And I said no to a lot more, to the extent where I made it to the semifinals. And in the semifinals, I did exactly what I wanted. And to the extent where they probably hated me on certain days towards the end of the show, because I kind of finally had my head wrapped around this idea that I've kind of made it far enough to where this show's live and I can do whatever I want in this show to a degree. So
Blake Vogt. Woo.
Towards the beginning, it was, if I don't do what they say, they just won't air my footage.
Right.
And I've heard those stories from friends who auditioned, got yeses, went through, and then didn't agree to do things they wanted, and then AGT just didn't air their stuff. So
That's actually why this show is not live, so that you can't push us around and tell us how it's going to be.
Well, Blake, that's the same thing we heard from Nathan Burton back when, Nathan was one of the first ones to go pretty far into the show, and Nathan
yeah,
was very adamant what he would and would not do, because part of on Nathan's mind was, yeah, maybe I could do it, but will it look good? And the judges may want this, but the chances of it maybe deviating and not being good, he didn't want to risk that, and he was very smart and created, from his run on there, which, gosh, maybe it was 8 years ago or so, almost the impression that he won, because he made it far enough, and then they brought him back later on because Nathan was a pro. And I think with you, how much does it help the fact that you've worked for the biggest and best TV magic there's been out there,
With all the Magic Davids.
yeah, and an Andrew Main too,
and with the Davids and Drews of TV, I think it helped. Once I made it through again a few rounds, but I couldn't really reference those job experiences because I'm 27. What?
I meant the knowledge, not how that got door. I mean, what you learned doing those sorts of things.
Massively helpful because I knew what to look for and what to be careful of and what to expect, even though I was told one thing and everybody was saying one thing on there, and I knew that it was most likely something else from every experience I'd had in television, being behind the scenes. So that was really helpful as far as expectations I had for different things and being ready. Again, being ready for the worst sounds bad, but like planning for every possible thing that could and ended up did happening. I was kind of ready for it. But all of the experience I had, like when I work on a magic project, and I'm behind the scenes, I can kind of throw around these other magic projects I've worked on as reference or as like examples, or I could say, what if we tried this because on the last show I worked on, we did this and it worked and people listened to me. But on that show, I was like this 27-year-old magician that they'd never heard of, and I looked 15. So for me to be like, well, from my production experience, we should shoot it from over here. Everybody there was like, oh, that's cute. Like, thanks. We got this. And then finally I had to keep at it, keep saying that type of thing. And then they started to listen. So that was cool.
That's one of the problems we deal with in magic is when we're working at TV people, TV producers, they're like, well, I know TV. And it's like, yeah, but magic and TV is a different animal. It's a particular kind of theater that you have to adapt and evolve to work there.
Yeah, I think it was like picking my battles too was a good advice I was given by one of the previous magicians on the show. Like picking which battles you choose to not lose and picking which ones you choose to kind of like roll over or compromise on. Like I remember a big creative call I had after I made it through judges cuts, because that meant I got to do 2 big live shows, or like potentially like after that. So I had to pitch all of those routines before they even started and had to get approval on them so that they knew what to go ahead and start putting into motion as far as production went. And we had these creative calls with these people on their team that were experts at everything.
For audio listeners, he just did quotes.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Yeah.
most people watching the video. But...
Okay, but so like I remember on one specific call, I can't remember the exact thing, but it was something along the lines of, well, what if instead of you doing it with a blue jay and eggs, what if it was something else besides eggs? What if it was like balls, or what if it was like, something spherical? And on the call, I was like, no, it's going to be an egg because I've done this trick for the last couple of years. I only know how it works with an egg. Since we film in 2 weeks, I won't have the time to do it. So I think I'm going to go with egg, but I like where you're at, thinking about different things. And then like the next thing they were like, well, what if you wore dark blue jeans instead of black blue jeans? I was like, you know what? I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's go with your idea on that, because I was wrong 100% when it comes to black jeans. You're right. Let's go blue jeans. I totally agree. You guys are the best.
The hardest part for me to have appreciated when I first started TV is you get in these calls or these meetings and you're talking to somebody who seems to have a very strong opinion, and you realize they've thought about this for all of 6 seconds, and then this is what I think, da 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 da, and you're like, oh, okay, well they just told me this thing, and then as you get further into it, you realize nobody knows anything. And what you did was smart, was talking to a bunch of different guys when you looked for the same thing that kept coming up. The advice that you gave, like, do the thing that you want to go do live, go do the thing that you want to get work for doing, because that's where the work is going to be, and that's what TV should be used for. It's a way to sell something.
Right. And I think along those same lines too is no trash talking those people I was talking to. They've done amazing things and they're amazing at what they do. But, from a job security standpoint, they want to feel involved as well. So I think one, not necessarily wrong, but a harder approach to go at those types of shows, it feels like from the contestant standpoint, is too hard, like too black and white, like no to everything you're saying. I only want to do it my way, might be a mistake, because then you don't have their full support. If you look at your act and the things you want to do and pick the few staple pillar things in that act that are what make the act, then maybe you being more willing to open up to their ideas and collaborate with them, and maybe not just take what they say, but maybe work with them and like come up with an idea together. That made for a good experience as well, I think.
So I want you to imagine that Mr. Jordan Gold here is contemplating going on America's Got Talent, all right? And he's sitting down with you. You guys are hanging out, at the Magic Castle, the Palace Bar. And Jordan's like, all right, Blake.
Hey, Blake, I think this could be my big moment. They gave me a call and I want the fame. I need this to push me into the next level. I really want those corporates. So what do you think? Should I go for it?
Don't do it. No. No. Yeah, man, go for it. I think if you really want it, and I think if you've got a lot of material and you're ready to come up with more material, and you're willing to work with them and their team, then you should totally do it.
So what's a lot of material?
I feel like.
Can I use some of your material? What tricks did you do on the show? Where did you learn them from? Is that all right if I do them? Are they in Tarbell?
Oh my gosh. Oh, good questions. I feel like, you want to. I have a wide. I had a wide range of original content to pick from going onto the show, so that I didn't have only 4 tricks that I could do for those 4 rounds. I had, either maybe 100 tricks that I could either make better, tweak for TV, polish for TV, recreate that idea, re-explore that idea, or, and then I feel like for the show, I had maybe 200, without exaggerating, concepts for tricks that I'd never done before, but I've always wanted to do, that a show like that would allow you to do.
So, I mean, I would guess that probably you're the only person to walk in there with that much material. And that's one of the things I've heard. You want to have 4 or 5 strong bits, and I've heard, man, I used to get, a while back, I'd get these panic sort of calls and be like, oh, I made it past round 2 on America's Got Talent, and I need ideas for round 3 and 4. I'm like, maybe you should have thought about that before you auditioned.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem. And I get people like, hey, I'm going to go do this trick that you invented for, my audition. And it's like, do you think, and like they're ordering it. I'm like, you've never done this thing before, and this is what you're going to go audition with, and I've watched people do my material very horribly, and it pains me. It is just to the point that people I go like, oh, what do you think? I'm like, don't do it. Don't do it. Get 100 performances down with this thing and then do it. But you think that, my brain is magically going to come up with some idea that you can spend 2 hours on and walk in and win this audition. That ain't the case.
Yeah. Well, and also I think, magicians out there, consider what you're doing, not just for your own self and career, but also for magic. Blake, when you went and did your Blue Jay trick, you're not hurting any other magicians that are, no one's out there doing that old Blue Jay trick. It's
Right.
your thing. It promoted your style and what you do. But when people go on, I think it was Britain's Got Talent, and somebody did cartoon, and I went out, and all of a sudden people in the real world go, "Oh, I've seen this on the internet," and now you, as a performing magician, all of a sudden can't do certain tricks because it's such an iconic thing that just kind of does. It's Dan Harlan's, but it these things belong sort of to all of us in a way. And it damages what magicians get to do when you put it on TV, and it doesn't help your character. You're just doing it because it's a good trick, and I think that's something that we need to consider too. Don't just go buy Andrew Main's material and think that you're going to win.
Well, I think, yeah, that's a great point. Even though you could probably win with a few of Andrew's routines.
Well, if you do, yeah. If you practice them, especially this new one that just came out that everyone should check out. What's the name of that one again? Pack Flat?
Flat Pack. Flat Pack's not out yet, but yeah. I mean, maybe out by the time this gets released, but yeah.
I think, to what you were speaking to, Andrew, about like ordering it, then going on and doing it, there are a few tricks where maybe the mechanics of the trick you can get down overnight, like a cartoon, but to get a cartoon to the level where you're performing your own unique version, performance, everything, it might take a year to do that. So I think, for doing stuff on TV, it's one thing. I had to treat it, because with TV shows, like with Don't Trust Andrew Main and stuff, we were coming up with crazy new magic things that you didn't have a year to practice. No. But we could film it 10 times and take the best couple of takes, and we knew that all the 10 times you were going to perform it well for that person, but it might not be the perfect take for TV. Well, with AGT, you had the one take.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and go through, and then for the last 2 rounds they were live, and I didn't know if they were like an hour tape delayed or like the next day tape delayed. They were, I think they said 3 seconds or something before they were to 13 million people or whatever. So that was another level to consider as well, that the trick itself had to be tricks I was doing on the show that the mechanics were automatic and were muscle memory, and I could focus solely on, because I had never done the Blue Jay box trick with the egg. I don't casually do that. That was came up with for the show. I had done a Blue Jay joke before in a show. I had done Bill and Egg before, and then I had done this trick that I call Invisible Card 1,000 times. So I had done that trick for 5 or 6 years. So I knew that the mechanics of how the bulk of the trick worked, I could do in my sleep, and however many people were watching, it wouldn't really change that. And then even still, the performance I put together for that, since I'd never done it in front of a live audience before, I practiced the crap out of it in my apartment, but then I went to Booby Trap and did it twice.
I saw you do it at Booby Trap, actually.
There you go. Oh, gosh.
So Booby Trap is this weekly kind of variety, go try different stuff show here in Los Angeles.
Yeah. So you probably saw a really bad performance if you saw it at Booby Trap.
I mean, it was all right. Wouldn't call it really bad.
It was
fun. I was not expecting, it's such a completely different trick. Ooh. So it's just, as a magician, anytime you see something you've never seen before or haven't heard of, it kind of takes you back. So, that's what the great thing about magic for most people is we get to play in the unexpected, except for other magicians who, they see the first 2 seconds of something and it's like, oh, I know what that trick is, so.
Right. So I think, working it out in front of live audiences though here in LA, because I made it through auditions and then the judge cuts, and then I had like a 2-month break to work on what I was going to do for the quarterfinals. And so instead of just working on it out of my apartment like I was doing it, I went to 2 or 3 open mics here in LA first, and then like Booby Trap, which is a variety show here in LA. And I learned 500 things every time I did it in front of a live audience. Filmed it every time, and then like put myself through the misery of watching myself do it one night so bad, like so bad, to the extent where the trick is where a card comes out of an egg, and one night I just could not get the bag open, and then I could not get the card open because of all of the egg yolk. So if you know, on the show, I ended up not using the egg yolk, and I ended up telling the producers that there was going to be no egg yolk either the day of filming or the day before. And they were under the impression there was going to be egg yolk. And I just waited till the last minute, and I was like, we're not, no.
Yeah, that's hard, but that's the thing that comes from doing. And one of the things I'll say too about AGT too is like anecdotally, you know, there's supposed to be like kind of like two lines of like people. There's the people who are, you know, that are gonna probably be on the show, and the people that are gonna be the comic relief kind of thing too. And you know, I've heard somebody said, yeah, I saw so and so, they didn't know they were in the other line. It's like, oh, and so earlier on, like, yeah, the fact that like egg yolk could screw it up and you wouldn't get it open, they would love that, you know.
Right, that's a good point.
You know,
yeah.
I've talked to some people like, oh, I'm thinking about doing the show, and you're kind of like, yeah, they want you to do the show because they want to make fun of you, which that show has done in the past.
That was really hard during auditions because my audition story is horrendous, and it would take forever, and it didn't even ever air, my audition. So, but I ended up sitting in a room for 12 or 14 hours one day, waiting to audition before I finally got to go on. So I saw all of these people going through, and what was cool to me was the majority of the people who were the butt of the joke, I didn't realize knew going into it they were kind of probably the butt of the joke. So I was seeing these people like sitting around. I distinctly remember a husband and wife, and I was like, what do you guys do? And they're like, oh, we do this stupid thing where, you know, like we try to do this, but it's really bad. And like, we're just doing it for fun because all of our buddies are going to be watching this. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And they go out, they did horrible. Judges made fun of them. They acted mad. They came off stage, started laughing with each other. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then the opposite spectrum of that was like this sweet elderly couple that were like, this is what we do. This is how we make our living. We are very serious at this. And it was like one of the worst things I'd ever seen. They got made fun of, and they came off stage like cursing out the production, telling everybody how awful their experience was. And it was really sad. So you see all of it, I guess.
Yeah.
Makes you know which category you're in, or I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's hard. I mean, we're, you know, especially in magic, we're very good at self-delusion. So.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, one thing that was really hard for me, but I still did, was I sent the clips of me bombing doing this stupid egg thing. I did it maybe 2 or 3 times before I even did a booby trap. So you would have seen Jordan at least like the 3rd or 4th performance. And even still, I was struggling through the egg yolk, I think, and the beats of the trick and what it was. But I sent those clips to my close friends in magic, whose opinions I really respect, and like, you know, even I would write like a 3-paragraph email like, look, I know this sucks, I know I did this wrong, I know I did this wrong, I know I did this wrong, so you don't have to tell me that, but any other notes you have besides all of these things that I already am aware of, I would appreciate. And those types of people were really helpful to send stuff to and then get notes on, you know.
What's interesting about that is, you know, here in LA, there are a lot of comedy clubs and area and just venues for performers to be at. And you see a lot of the people that go on AGT are here. Tommy and Amelie did Booby Trap as well, and Derek Hughes. And a lot of these guys who end up on the show, if you sort of go to these shows around LA, you get to see them before they do their audition. Yeah. And the people that are out there practicing and performing and honing it, those are usually the people that do really well. And then the people you've never seen perform on a stage or heard of, or, you know, maybe they live in LA, but they're not out there working on their material. They just think, oh, this is going to be great. And then those are usually the people that bomb. So yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that the people who are out there performing a lot are the people who seem to be doing better on the show.
Totally a coincidence.
Yes. Blake, it's time now for the round where we declare the world champion, Magic champion of the week.
Oh.
Woo!
Oh.
Blake, just so you know, you're the only person competing for world champion, Magic champion of the week. Okay? Should you win this, you get the title, world champion, Magic champion
Of
Magic
the week.
Club of the week.
Of the week.
Okay, got it.
All right, Blake, you ready?
Ready.
What card am I holding up?
Gosh, come on. All right, red bike. Let's see, I don't think you're a stack guy, because that would mean it'd be the 4 of clubs, it'd be on the top of your deck. Let's see, I'm guessing you 7 of hearts.
4 of clubs is close. It's the 2 of clubs, Blake. You were wrong, but because you're our only contestant, you win world champion, Magic champion of the week. It's always going to be the 2 of clubs, just so you know. Unless it's Jordan, and then it may not be.
That was my next.
What?
That was my next.
See, there we go. Congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. We have a brand new world champion, Magic champion of the week. Simon Coronel was our last champion. He was so good, I actually forgot to have him do that, but he still won anyways. But you have now dethroned Simon.
That feels really good. That feels great.
Passed
Thank
on
you.
to you. Listen, we're working on different segments and things like we want to try here. And one of the things I was thinking about doing was maybe once a week pulling something out of a book I wrote called How to Make Money with Magic, or 50 Ways to Make Money with Magic. Some people are interested in that. And like randomly pulling something up and just throwing it out there as a topic for conversation. So,
Cool.
And Jordan, sound good to you?
Sounds good to me.
So I pull up number 15 randomly, the micro show. Instead of putting together a bigger, longer show, put together a micro show that's under 10 minutes in length and can be formed in any situation. There are 1,000 situations where people could use a magician. You can tell how long ago I wrote this because I used situation twice in 2 successive sentences. There are thousands of situations where people could use a magician to come in and make a point to a group or audience and then go away. Luncheons, breakfast meetings, sales meetings are all potential places where you could perform. Groups that put on those functions may not have the money or time for a whole show, but they'd love to have some added entertainment value. What's it worth to you to hop in your car, do 10 minutes, and be back home in under an hour? Your micro show could be visual, easy to perform, and pack a lot of punch. Don't spend the 10 minutes doing some elaborate trick with minimal payoff. A micro show enables you to create more markets to sell your service. Most magicians reduce their markets. Think the other way, create new opportunities to perform.
That's great advice.
I thought about this because I had heard of a couple stories. After about the third time I heard somebody describe sort of an anecdote like, oh yeah, I was hired to entertain, some company had clients that between a boardroom and to an elevator or whatever, they wanted to entertain the client from here to there or whatever, which maybe have been overdoing it. Or, we're meeting them like at the airport for cocktails. And we thought it'd be fun to have something kind of neat to do. And sometimes when you're talking in the corporate world or things like that, money's not the problem. Time is. And like, oh, we get a magician. Oh, yeah, but that'd be 30 minutes or 35 minutes. But, if we had somebody come in there and do like a great 10 or 15 minutes at the start of a meeting, at the start of a presentation, it might be really fun to do that. And that's often why do they have magicians do cocktail hours and not stage shows? It's because of the time considerations, and they're trying to figure that out. But if you can say, hey, I do a really amazing 10-minute thing, goes in and comes in and out, and it's very, very quick. That's a market, something to think about. Really so
well, and also it doesn't have to be necessarily just you're there for 10 minutes. Maybe the show is only 10 minutes. I did one where it was for a liquor brand, an absinthe company, Pernod, and they had this really cool event, and all of this stuff was happening in this really big themed Disneyland sort of esque bar. And I had a little show inside of a little room, and people would come through it and see the show and then exit. And so it was sort of a revolving thing. So you do the show over and over. But it was sort of a way to bridge the gap between doing walk around or close up magic and doing a full show where everyone stops. And it's also not the typical thing that a lot of magicians are trying to book themselves for, but it worked really well for the flow of their event. So there's countless ways you can incorporate yourself into your client's events. I think the micro show is a great way to just have that in your pocket, be able to pull it out, both figuratively and literally, because it could fit in your pockets.
Yeah.
Micro show.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think no, just coming from I perform a lot out here at either the Comedy and Magic Club or Magic Castle, where you have to know your timing so tight. Or I've performed at the Improv here in LA, and in these comedy clubs and these different variety shows like Booby Trap and stuff. If you perform at these things, I've done this out of necessity, but it's a cool maybe skill to develop even if you're not performing in those venues. But I know to the second, like within a 10 to 30-second range, how long every single one of my routines are, to the extent where if you told me to go on stage and do 3 minutes, I know what I can do. If you told me to go do 13 minutes, I will go on stage and I'll come off anywhere from 12 and a half to 13 and a half minutes guaranteed. So like knowing your material inside and out, so that if a client ever came to you and either you pitched it, or if they were like, well, we would love to have you do 10 minutes before the show, instead of you saying, oh, I have an hour, so I don't know what 10 I would do, or I don't know how long each of my tricks are, to what the choices are. Like if you know how long every trick is in your act minus transitions, then you can really piecemeal any type of micro show, medium-sized show, or large show easier, I would think.
Yep. Very good advice. So now is the section where we're going to make recommendations or picks, any sort of suggestion. And I'll lead off with a book that I read because somebody told me to read it, and then I had to go back and read it again to really sort of grasp and appreciate some of the things in there. And that was Showmanship for Magicians by Henny Nelms, which had, if you're a kid who's just interested in methods and how to do things, a whole section on posture and how to pick things up seems like the stupidest thing in the world. But then when you finally watch yourself on video up on stage and you're like, man, I'm ungainly, I'm like a drunk orangutan and not an entertaining way, I need to learn how to handle myself better. That book was extremely helpful because it was about showmanship and how to be a better showman. And man, that is a skill that we just can be extremely dismissive of. And I even think magicians sometimes don't realize the difference. We'll watch somebody who does something like, it was really cool, but the audience went crazy for it. I don't know, it's not that big of a trick. Like, yeah, it's because a showman did it. Somebody who knows how to make a presentation out of something did it. Mm-hmm. So that's my pick. Either of you have one?
I do. My pick this week is actually a pretty new thing. It's out on Netflix. If you have Netflix, you can go watch it tonight. It's called Abstract, and it's about design. Was that what you were gonna say, or you just?
Mine.
I stole it. Oh.
No, keep going. I completely agree with whatever you're about to say.
We could talk about it together then. It's about design. Each episode features a different designer, and anything you can absorb on design. Actually, you can talk about Abstract a little more because I have another one. Okay.
Keep going. I haven't seen them all yet.
It really talks about the difference between art, the difference between art and design, and what design means. And the second episode, they talk about how art is self-expression, and it's really just about the individual creating something that is about their perspective. And design is solving a problem for somebody else. And if somebody else appreciates it, that's great. But it's really about creating. It's about solving that problem. And magic, I think, falls directly into both of those, because we do magic to express ourselves, but we also do magic to solve certain problems, which is, how can I make this thing apparently disappear when it's not really disappearing? What are the design elements of that? And I think that if you go watch this as a magician, a lot of these messages will really resonate with you, and you'll be inspired to create. And anything that has nothing to do with magic but immediately makes you inspired to go create magic, I think is very powerful and worth taking in and watching. Go watch it. It's really good. It's called Abstract.
I totally agree with everything Jordan just said. I did not know that was going to be a question. So as you were speaking, Andrew, all I was thinking about was, well, I found this new show on Netflix this morning after being sad after watching a magic documentary. Um, so, I watch a lot of shows. I am obsessed with Netflix, Hulu, movies, TV, going to the movie theater during the week. So maybe if my one tip would just be to watch as many things as possible with, a neutral eye, because you don't want to always watch everything as a magician and ruin maybe that experience for yourself. But I do sometimes strictly pick movies or TV shows. Like I just went back and watched Stranger Things, the series, for a second time, only with a magic eye. Like just like, what could I steal or absorb or like take from the show that made me and so many other people feel so many things and put it into my stuff. But like that show, The Abstract, I'm only 2 episodes in and it's outrageously motivating. I might pull an all-nighter tonight and finish it because it's so good. And the one quote I heard in episode 1 that kind of like turned my world upside down that I'd never heard is from the artist Chuck Close. And he said, inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up and get to work. And the quote, in the context of the show, I don't want to give anything away, but the general idea was like, if you just think that creative people or smart people just sit around and light bulbs go off, you're an idiot. Like, it's just because they go in and they put the time in and they sit at their desk. And like, I think I was walking around my apartment while I was watching this and I was like, man, I'm going to go sit at my desk.
Yeah.
So it's a great show. I would watch that show.
That's the thing that comes up a lot when I talk about writing. People are like, oh, I'm looking for inspiration, whatever. Like, you just sit down in front of the keyboard. It's you either believe in free will or accept the illusion of free will or whatever, and you will yourself to sit down and go do it. You can wait for the magical. People want this. What's the magic spark? It's easy. You just go do it. You don't need to have, the Jiminy Cricket pop on your shoulder and make it happen for you. You just go do it, which is the hardest thing, but it's the easiest thing in some ways.
Yeah, like the idea of, I think, like what I've talked about with strictly magic consulting stuff I've done is like, you got to get through 99 bad ideas before you get a good one. And people think that people can sit around and just come up with good ones. And those people are only Daniel Garcia and Caleb Morelli. But besides those two people, regular people have to sit around and no. But I think, one thing that like David Blaine, I got hired to work for David Blaine and David Copperfield. And both of those people in the pre-interview were like, what good ideas do you promise you will bring to this team if we hire you? And in both situations, I said, I promise you 0 good ideas, but I promise you I will be the guy that never runs out of bad ideas. And that answer got me hired both times. And I think to speak to that more, it's like, just don't stop, even if you can only come up with bad ideas, because eventually you'll be due for a good one,
What would be, as we close here, and we're going to adjourn and we're going to go to the secret session. So for our Patreon supporters, Blake's going to give us some cool insight. He showed us a really cool change. It's like one-handed, the card magically changed to another. And also you're going to talk a bit about card splitting. I'm going to spring
and I believe that Blake is also going to, in the secret sessions, going to give us 99 bad tricks and then one really good one,
true.
right?
It's going to be a long secret session.
It's a long secret session.
So I'm going to ask, what is one thing you learned from David Blaine, and what's one thing you learned from David Copperfield? An example that I brought up from working on a Copperfield special was his attention to details that I didn't even know were important or even were worthy of calling details, and I realized, oh man, this guy sees things that are there, but I never knew were there.
Yeah. That's really true to David, both Davids. I think Copperfield is a workaholic, which I think a lot of massively successful people are, and kind of, what do you mean?
What is that? When you say workaholic, is he what, 9 to 5 and 5:15, 9 to 6 p.m.?
Like 9 a.m. to 9 a.m. Like, it really felt like being around him. It was inspiring because it wasn't like so many stories I hear about people who have a boss and they're like, my boss is so lazy, my boss is this. It was really hard to be lazy around him or, not deliver on stuff because he was, while you were assigned one project, he was working on 10. And I think after being next to him, 12 to 14 hours a day for a whole year, it was like, oh, this is completely not an accident that he's the most famous magician to ever live. It's like, being around him, it was like, maybe there are some things that you have to sacrifice that some people wouldn't want to sacrifice because you have to work so hard, or, he chooses to work so hard. But he is definitely rewarded with the success he has because he's earned it. So I think from Copperfield, it was just the work ethic was contagious and inspiring. Blaine worked hard, but not as hard as Copperfield. I think the thing that blew me away, because I lived on Blaine's couch for 6 months, so I literally woke up, saw him, fell asleep, talking to him sometimes, and it was magic 24/7, and I had no idea that someone could perform that much magic consistently all the time, anywhere, always, on command. And that guy never turns it off. And we would go out to dinner, we would go to a bar. If you've ever seen David out in public or something, he's just always doing magic for magicians, for laymen, for kids, for adults, for everyone. And you can genuinely tell that he loves it. One story that I specifically remember was we were filming in front of a school when we were filming Real or Magic, and it was like 2:45, like the school was about to get let out, and the director was like, we got to go because all these kids are about to be in the back of the shot, and none of their parents are around, so we're not going to be able to use any of this footage, so we got to go film somewhere else. And David, like one of the few times I ever saw him lose his crap, he went nuts at the director and was like, if this is why you think I do what I do, you need to reevaluate why you're involved in this project. Sent the crew home, and he, Garcia, Rangel, Enrico, and I, we stood and watched while he did magic for kids for like 2 hours with no camera. And I was like, holy crap. Like, this is, like, if you want to be really successful at what you do, from Copperfield, I learned you got to work really hard. And from Blaine, I learned you just got to love the crap out of it. So,
you know, and that's the thing about Blaine that I love is that I hear a lot of stories about, him doing stuff. When we started iTricks and we would, cover like blogs and looking for items, we were always surprised we'd find these little random sort of things about, like one of my favorite stories was a girl who was a deaf blogger who wrote about being on the subway and Blaine doing magic for her and just this. And it wasn't because he had no idea that she was going to talk about this and say what a neat experience it was. He saw that she was, hearing impaired, and he's like, this is a challenge. I want to go do magic for this person to see how that works. And that's the real guy.
Yep. That's so cool.
Blake, thank you so much. I am super stoked, as is Jordan. I'll speak for him. I'm stoked too, that you're going to be joining us in the secret session. And let's adjourn Magic Club and retire
Invisible
to the secret
gavel.
session.
To the secret session.
Yes.